So our next speaker is Trevor Locke. Trevor works for New Energy, a firm here in Edmonton. Trevor is an example of someone who pretty much came out of high school, I believe, and entered the solar field. He was born in BC, started working, I believe, in solar hot water in BC. And when he came to Edmonton, he entered the NATE program. As I think the first class of NATE, Trevor was in it, and Beth was in it as well. So he's since got a job. He's a project manager with New Energy. Yeah, and he's been a very active participator in the solar community. He's been a valued treasurer for the Solar Energy Society, and he unfortunately is moving to Sweden soon, following his girlfriend who's Swedish. And it also may have to do with the fact that he loves snowboarding so much. I don't know. But anyway, please help me to welcome Trevor Locke.
Thanks, Rob. So Rob's right. My name is Trevor Locke, and I work for a New Energy group out of Edmonton. My official title, as it would be, is Renewable Systems Manager. A little bit about New Energy first. We're a group company, so we have 4 different divisions. We have our biggest division is mechanical. They do climate control stuff. Let's go like this. There we go. So our biggest division is mechanical. We also have an electrical division that's called Pure Electric. They do mostly electrical work, commercial, new construction kind of stuff. We have a renewable energy systems group. That's myself and a few other guys on the solar team. And we also have a building science group, which is a couple of mechanical engineers, and they focus mostly on energy efficiency and mechanical design for buildings. All in all, we're about 45 people between all the groups put together. So some responsibilities that I have as a renewable systems manager, the main one is to deliver turnkey solar projects. That's PV and thermal. That's really from start to finish. When we talk about turnkey, that means that when the client comes into my office, they have an idea in their mind. I help them figure out what that idea means. We do a design for that, figure out what it would cost. I'll put together a proposal, give that back to the client. And then if the numbers work and they want to go forward with it, we'll get some material ordered and the equipment on the go. And then from there, I would hand it off to our installation crew. So I've got a couple of guys who take care of the on-site construction work. I'll be preparing things for them. That's a lot of my job is getting that ready to go for them. Things that I have to do for them are I have to get permits in place, so pull permits from the applicable jurisdictions. Sometimes that's requires getting engineering done, electrical or structural a lot of the time. We got to get structural done in order to get a permit for building. This is the scope, time, cost. That's a lot of my life there. We try and maintain the quality aspect of our projects, but there's when challenges come up, you're getting pulled in different directions. Sometimes you're running over budget. How do I balance that and still maintain the quality of the project? How do we stay on time and still deliver a quality project? And sometimes the scope starts to grow. The client's asking us to do other things. Can we still deliver the quality that they want within the scope that we have a budget for? So that's a lot of the things that I deal with on a day-to-day basis, managing the crew and making sure that they have things to do and they can stay busy. When we talk about with power comes responsibility, I'm a project manager, so really I'm responsible for making things happen from start to finish, and a lot of stuff comes up sort of on the finishing end where you're responsible for that project being completed. So some of the things that I kind of deal with on a day-to-day basis is that you have to make sure that project is working at the end of the day. Commissioning is sometimes a challenge. It's something that we talk about as a project manager. You do a lot of commissioning, which is the final stages of the project, making sure that everything's running properly, quality assurance, that kind of stuff. And that can be a challenge if you have things that are not tying together well at the end of a project. So being responsible for all that, your day ends when the project is working. And sometimes that might be a while. If we talk about like an average work week for myself, it's not less than 50 hours for sure. At worst, it can be 75 plus, but it varies. A usual week might be between 50 and 60 hours, but it's because you're responsible for making sure that everything works at the end of the day, and you have to make sure that that project is going to deliver what the client wants. Some perks that I have with my position is that I have a lot of freedom. I sort of run my own show. I have the guys underneath me, but I can choose when I want to come in and go out of work. Usually that's a bad thing because I'm staying until late to make sure that the project is working, but I do have a lot of freedom. Making a difference is a big one for me. You get a lot of gratification when you can see the results of what your work are. If you're in a great big company, sometimes you might feel like what you're doing gets lost in the shuffle, but I get to see the results of everything that I do. When you make something, you do a design, and at the end of the day, that functions in the way that you imagine, that's pretty gratifying. So that's a big reward for me. And professional growth is another one. I get to learn so many new things. Jim was talking about being a lifelong learner, and definitely on a daily basis I learn something new and I'm challenged to be better. So growing as a person and in a professional manner, that's a good thing about the job. We talk about education and training. Let's go back. When I grew up in Vancouver and I wanted to take a course that allowed me to get into renewable energy closer to home, Vancouver Island University had a program. If any of you know Eric Smiley, he actually was the chair of that program. It got canceled the year that I got accepted. So I got accepted, and then in like the last week of August, I was planning to move out there and take residence and stuff in September. The last week of August, I got a letter saying, sorry, we didn't have enough people enroll in the program. This is over. We're really sorry. So I got stranded for a little while, and I kind of wondered what I was going to do. I needed to, make some money to pay the bills. So I looked for some companies locally who were doing renewable energy things. I got on with a solar thermal company in Vancouver. So we were installing hot water heating systems, mostly for commercial, and I was really an installer for that company. It was a pretty small group, so I got to do some diverse tasks, but that was sort of the filler in between when I took my real renewable energy education and losing that position at Vancouver Island University. So during that year that I was in Vancouver working for the hot water company, I found the NATE program. It was a new thing. It hadn't been run before. It was just like we're starting this next September kind of thing. And I thought that looked pretty good, so I packed up all my stuff and we moved to Edmonton the following year, and I took 2 years at NATE. Being at NATE, it gives you a really diverse range of knowledge. You have a pretty good idea of a lot of different technologies and how they work. A bit of a challenge is figuring out how do I take that now and apply that to a company. There's a number of companies out there, but how do I parallel with them? How am I going to integrate with them? And how am I going to convince them that I can be beneficial to that company? So I looked around. There was a lot of different companies in town. New Energy happened to be one of them. They also sort of had a diverse focus, which aligned well with the technologies that we studied in the program. So I kind of found them, we matched up pretty well, and then I had to go through the process of pestering them and convincing them that they needed me. They didn't know that then. I think they would probably say something different now, but I really had to convince them to make a position for me because we did have a lot of things in common, but they didn't have a job posting saying renewable energy technician that I could apply to. I had to convince them to set something up. I said, this is what I can do, this is what you guys do, this is how we can work together. And they agreed that we would give it a trial period. I worked for them first in the summer between the first and second years of the NATE program. So I did year one. Then at the end of April, I went and worked for New Energy for 4 months. I went back to school in September to finish my second year. So that was one thing that I kind of had as a challenge, was trying to convince a company that I could be beneficial to them, and I really got them to make this position for me, and it's worked out really well on both ends. If we talk about where I see myself going in the future. It's a bit of a kibosh because I'm moving overseas, but if we kind of consider the general picture as a renewable energy technologist and a project manager, what kinds of things do I want to focus on going forward? Jim touched on this a bit already, actually a lot, but one thing with the renewable energy sphere is that things change super fast in terms of technology advancing, but also the needs for what people are going to actually have demand for. You have to stay on top of that. You can't get complacent and just say, okay, I know how to do electrical now. This is going to be my career for the next 20 years. Things change, like maybe not weekly, but monthly. Product availability changes. When we look at the energy grid, how do we best take advantage of that situation and make sure that we're giving the clients the best value? That stuff changes all the time, and you have to be ready to adapt to that because you can get left behind really quickly, and you can see your competitors going on to new technologies, and you don't want that. So I would say being adaptable and just making sure that I'm up to date on what the latest stuff is, that's something I definitely always want to stay up with. Growing sustainably, we kind of talk about this big opportunity for Alberta and Western Canada in terms of a new climate policy, trying to be more green. If government gives us some support, what does that mean? Well, we're growing as a company every year, but if we saw a huge explosion in terms of demand, that might not really be sustainable for us, and we want to make sure we weren't spreading ourselves too thin so that we were maintaining the quality that we talked about in that triangle, and some of the other things didn't get sacrificed along the way. I think that would be a big challenge for any project manager going forward, is to try and keep that under control so that you have a good quality you can deliver to your clients, and the clients are always happy. And then learning along the way. This is more than just technology. For myself, this is in relation to my team that works underneath me. I've never managed a group of people before I had this position, and there's a lot of things to learn about that. The guys have some demands. We have to make sure we're treating them fairly, and also that we keep good people on our crew so that we don't have a lot of turnover and we're not trying to retrain people. Having people with the right attitude and mindset really helps us to deliver that quality, because it goes all the way from top to bottom on the chain. Everybody has a vested interest in the project, and they want to make sure that it's delivered well. So that's something that I'm working on in my career sense, is trying to make sure that our team is the best team that it can be. If we talk about growth and adding people to our team, time? Okay, yeah. This is always sort of dependent on the demand that you have, and I talked about growth. This is really based on how many jobs you're running at a given time. Do we have the capacity to take on more people? Sometimes we do. Sometimes if things are slow, it can be more challenging. So some skills, like Jim said, that would be useful are having an alternative energy background and some knowledge of what's going on, but also having an open mind and good problem-solving skills. Those would be useful for any employer. They wanted you to be able to learn on your own. Just a few more things, sort of advice for the solar professional or somebody who wants to get into the field. If you're trying to look for a job, know what your strengths are. Try and understand where you're going to add value to a company, so you're not just giving them a resume. You can tell them, this is what I can do for you, and this is how it will benefit you as a company. Get education and attend training. Being here is a good start. Lakeland and Nate are other good places you can go to beef that up. Understanding the market, that it is a smaller market. Like all the slices of the pie, renewables are a very small part of electricity generation, so it's a small market. Knowing that it is a small market and it's growing now can help you to be set up. Let's talk about this last point here, being that if it's a small market and maybe there's not a lot of full-time things, it might be advantageous to work for a company that has some projects that are solar, and you can do maybe, let's just give an example, you could work for Stantec doing engineering work, and when they have solar projects, you can work on them and build your knowledge there, but you're not a burden to them that they have to have solar work for you all the time. If you can find a way to kind of blend that in and incorporate slowly, it might help you to secure a position earlier. So that's pretty much everything that I had. Thanks for being here, and I hope what I said was useful.
Okay, our next speaker is Beth Andrew. She grew up in Edmonton. She went to the University of Alberta and actually got her degree in philosophy. And I asked her why she didn't continue with philosophy, and she said, well, I'd have to stay in school longer to get at least a master's degree so that I could actually get a job. And so anyway, she decided to enter the NAIT program. She was also part of the first group that entered the NAIT program. And from what I know of the NAIT program, having been involved with it a little bit, she chose a path that wasn't easier for her in terms of time commitment and study. And so she's an example of what we see a lot of here, is that just a deep inspiration is what carried her through. And she also has served on the Solar Energy Society board. And she works for a company called Great Canadian Solar. So please help me to welcome Beth.
My name is Beth Andrew, as Rob just said, and I am a renewable energy technologist. I work for Great Canadian Solar, which he also said, taking all my material. So I'm going to tell you how that happened. After high school, I didn't know what to do with myself. I was directionless, didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. So naturally, I went and got a philosophy degree. And after that, I looked for work as a philosopher, and so I was forced to get some other jobs. I became what is called underemployed. I got, your typical low-paying jobs like serving, landscaping, grocery store, sketchy renovation company, stuff like that. But in the meantime, I realized that I really value the environment and that maybe what I should do is actually save the world. So I didn't really know how to go about that, but when I heard that NAIT had a brand new alternative energy technology program, I just knew that would be my first step, even though I had no idea what a technologist does or what I was getting myself into. So at 30 years of age, I went back to school, slightly terrified, but I made my way through, and the alternative energy staff was very supportive and instrumental, in fact, in getting me employed when I was done. So big thanks to Tim and to Jim, who actually hired me to teach one of the labs in the program. And at about that time, that's when I started at Great Canadian Solar as well. And yeah, that was a busy few months right there. But that's how that happened. So what is it like on a day-to-day basis? Well, generally it's 40 hours a week, but I do work quite a bit of overtime. But it's really flexible. That's one of the benefits of working for a small company with a boss who's cool with that. And my coworker Andrew and I, yes, his name's Andrew, my last name is Andrew, and we are Team Andrew. Actually, I should mention that he's also a alternative energy grad, and so is Dave, who works on our install crew and helps us in the office as well. Anyway, what we do in a day, I couldn't possibly list all the different things we do. There's a huge variety, which is one of the things I like about my job. We talk to potential customers, we advise them, we make sure they have realistic expectations. That's a big one. We provide quotes for them. We use different software for that, that use satellite images. Just to give you an idea of the tools that we use. We use AutoCAD, we get architectural drawings and put them in AutoCAD. We use AutoCAD to do our own engineering drawings. Sometimes we use manufacturers, their designing software if they're good. We use Excel, of course, for all sorts of things. What else do? We order materials, we go to trade shows, we do site assessments. That's me doing site assessments there. And of course, we do permitting, which is time consuming, and I'll just leave it at that. My likes and dislikes of my job. Well, everything I just mentioned, pretty much I like. Working for a small company appealed to me because I wanted to help shape the company as it grows, and I've been able to do that. And I definitely don't feel like a cog in a big machine, so that's nice. Between Andrew and I, we've developed all the processes, for lack of a better term, that we use. By using spreadsheets and templates, we make all our tasks more efficient, and I find that gratifying, just building the tools that we actually use in our day-to-day work. Another like is the obvious saving the world factor. Just the satisfaction that comes with knowing that you're doing something that you feel is right and that you feel is important. Another like would be the crazy people that I work with. There they are. We not only get along and work well together, we're also friends outside of work, so that's pretty lucky and pretty nice. Dislikes, the aforementioned permitting, I guess. It can be cumbersome, but you know what, even with that, you can make connections with people who just want to help you out and achieve the same goal, so there's even satisfaction there. Even the dislike is not even a complete dislike. I did think of one other thing that might be relevant to people who are looking to see if this is the sort of thing they want to do. I stand and sit in front of a computer all day. I do site assessments, like I said, but most days I spend in the office, which might not be for everyone. And this last slide is just some facts about our company. I don't really know what to say, but we've installed 1.5 megawatts. Clifton Loftdog is the owner, and he has been doing solar for 6 years. I would say the last couple of years have been the busiest. That's when I was hired. It was about 2 years ago. We have about 8 employees. Some of you might be wondering if we're hiring. No, just kidding. We'll be hiring in the spring when things ramp up. And we actually install all year round on a flat roof commercial during the winter. Hopefully flat roof commercial. You'll see in the next picture, not all the time. What are we looking for? Electricians are good. If you have residential or commercial experience, that's good. If you're not an electrician, just general construction experience, I would say your attitude is probably the biggest factor. You hear it all the time, but it's true. You have to be willing to work in very, very cold and very, very hot. And you have to not be afraid of heights, which I guess seems kind of obvious. And that is April. That is actually from today. And that is not a flat roof for April. And that's about 30 feet up. And I don't know about you, that looks scary. So you have to be up for that. Eventually, when we grow to be big enough, we'll be hiring more technologists, possibly more alternative energy technologists. So this is our mascot. His name is Solar, and that is the end. Thank you.
Okay, so our final speaker for the evening, and then we're going to bring everybody up for questions, is Ben Kilburn. So Ben Kilburn works for Skyfire Energy, and Ben's more of an old-timer in the solar industry. I think, if I count it right, I think you've been at it for 10 years, maybe? Yeah. So Ben's an example of someone who kind of put together the pieces on his own. He went to the United States, took a 5-day installation course with Renewable Energy International, Solar Energy International, and he then decided to become a journeyman electrician. So he went through the electrician's program, he also sits on the CISA board. I think you're probably thinking that everybody in the solar industry sits on the CISA board, but in part it's a small industry still. But let's see, what else can I tell you about Ben? He used to be on the board, yeah, not right now. So he started his own company, actually, about, I don't know, probably 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And he carried that on himself and did well, and then he joined a larger solar company. So that's an option as well. Anyway, please help me to welcome Ben.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks everybody for coming out. It's great to see a full room for another CISA event. There's definitely a buzz in the air around the solar industry these days, especially. As Rob said, my name is Ben Kilburn. I'm a partner with Skyfire Energy, and I'm the installation manager here in Edmonton, and I'm also a journeyman electrician. Skyfire has been in business since about 2001. We have offices in Edmonton and Calgary. We design, supply, and install grid-connected and off-grid systems in every province from Ontario to BC, as well as in the Yukon and the Northwest Territories. Within the past year, right here in Alberta, we installed a 2 megawatt solar PV system, the largest in Western Canada. And in British Columbia, we installed a 1 megawatt system in Kimberley, BC. I am an installation manager with Skyfire. Typically on the job site, I spend about 10 to 12 hours a day, every day on the job, Monday to Friday usually. My job usually involves making sure that everybody on the crews know what their tasks are, and making sure that we have everything on site to run smoothly. Making sure that the solar PV systems get installed properly, on time, and on budget. Since we're installing solar energy systems that run on sunlight, a good portion of our job is outside. Many systems are installed on the roofs of two-story homes where the pitch can be often 30 or even 33 degrees. That's fairly steep if you've never stood on a 33-degree pitch roof before. You have to be absolutely confident working at these heights and possess the skills and ability to work safely and efficiently on these roof pitches. There's a big difference between walking around with your handful of tools and materials on an 18-degree pitch roof and a 33-degree pitch roof. We do work all year round. It is a construction job. It can be sweltering plus 30-degree temperature without a cloud in the sky or a breeze in the air, or it can be minus 20 degrees and blowing snow. As you can see in the photo here, that weather change was just within a very short period of time. Obviously, everyone's safety is always a main priority. And while you need to keep the working and weather conditions in mind, you have to be able to adapt with the weather and sometimes work through the adverse weather conditions to complete a task. Now, that being said, working outdoors is one of the greatest benefits of this job, especially since the nice sunny days outweigh the rainy and windy ones. When we're not on a house or a high-rise roof, or on the side of a building on a swing stage or in a man lift, or in a field installing solar modules, we can be found crawling through, I'm on the wrong slide, dusty attics, like you can see there on the bottom, pulling wires, or we can be in meticulously clean electrical rooms, typically found in commercial buildings. There's always a bit of variety. Like I said, the outdoor conditions and the indoor conditions, it's not always the same. The job really changes day to day, and you have to be able to adapt to that. I'm not really sure what it was about solar energy that motivated me to pursue this career path. I remember in the early 2000s reading a booklet, Solar Energy for Your Home, and it talked about being able to produce energy, electricity, and heating your home from sunlight without needing to purchase or burn fuel. I think I was intrigued about the simplicity of the concept, using the abundant energy from the sun to heat and to power our homes. I was also intrigued by the fact that it was not being used on a more widespread basis, at least to my knowledge at the time. And it wasn't in Alberta and most of Canada. I think at about that time it was just starting to really pick up steam in Europe, mostly Germany. Basically From that point on, I always felt a little bit of excitement and a little bit of push inside whenever I saw something solar powered. At the time, most of the solar power that you would see was remote sign lighting, road signs, or traffic lights. And of course, you don't have to drive too far out of any city or town in Alberta to see a couple of solar modules mounted on every oil or gas well powering the SCADA or production metering systems. I knew I wanted to be involved in the solar energy, but at the time I just didn't know how. What I found out was that there was very few people or businesses actually offering solar electric systems for homes, and even fewer people that actually knew how to install them properly. I figured that if solar was going to be more widespread, and if I wanted to be involved, then I was going to have to learn to install the systems myself. This is what led me to learn how to design and install solar electric systems. I picked up a few good books that I could find. I came across Home Power magazine, which as I understand now is you get a free subscription to that if you sign up as a CISA member. And I also came across a well-known renewable energy training organization, Solar Energy International, that had been mentioned earlier. They're based in Boulder, Colorado. There was very little in terms of training available that I could find in Canada at the time. Luckily, SCI, Solar Energy International, had online courses as well as hands-on courses. So I did take one of their online PV design and installation courses. And a few months later, after that, I drove to San Francisco where SCI was hosting a hands-on design and installation course. At that time, the training courses that they were providing were more or less spread out across the country because solar training was still such a new thing that there weren't really individual places set up for it where they would have training institutes like you find now, like Lakeland and NATE. Eventually, even after I had taken this training, it was still hard to land a job, but eventually, but a year and a half later, it took that long, and being persistent, kind of the way Trevor said he was persistent with New Energy, I landed a job working in a warehouse in Edmonton for a company, ETI Solar, who supplied solar PV equipment to Western Canada. At the time, the major supplies were going out to oil and gas. That was the biggest market. ETI eventually sold a grid-connected solar PV system to a homeowner and needed someone to install it. Since I had the training, I was the guy to do it. Since then, working with a contracted electrician, I installed several PV systems with ETI. Then I decided I was ready for my next move. Unfortunately, it was away from the solar industry that I worked so hard to get into, but it was for the right reasons. I knew that if I wanted a career installing solar PV systems, solar electric systems, that I needed to be an electrician. And this was something that was brought up many times during the training that I had taken. Unfortunately, then in the early 2000s, there wasn't enough solar electric work in Alberta at the time to sustain an apprentice, let alone a journeyman electrician working on just solar electric systems. So I left ETI Solar and I began a 4-year electrical apprenticeship at NATE. I did a range of commercial, industrial, and some residential work. During my apprenticeship, I was still being approached to install PV systems because I had had the training and the experience around Edmonton doing so. So while I was still an apprentice in 2008, I decided to start my own company, Daystar Renewable Energy. Basically fast forward 5 years from then, and the demand was growing exponentially every year. I ended up partnering with Skyfire Energy, who at the time was based in Calgary only. I think the map that Jim found there on Google painted a really good picture about the potential advancement in the industry. Quite well. I would say there's even a few holes that could be filled in there. And I think he also mentioned that some of those jobs don't exist. Some of them do, some of them don't. But I think as the industry starts to mature a little bit more, we're definitely going to see that happening. Again, training is a lot easier to get and to find now compared to 10 years ago. CISA is a great source to start looking on their website for courses. They do offer a solar PV for electricians course. Obviously, Nate's alternative energy program and Lakeland's program as well. That's about all I have. Hopefully we can answer some more questions during the panel discussion. Thanks very much.